seem to whisper.
Somebody!
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Battlefield games used to make you feel something, from visuals that still look amazing today, to some of the best soundtracks to ever bless our ears in a video game. There's simply no denying just how raw and visceral the older games felt. I honestly remember asking myself, if things are this good right now, I could only imagine what they'll be like going forward. Well, Battlefield 5 flopped, Battlefield 2042 is a complete disaster, and with each and every new release came this feeling that Battlefield was losing what made it so unique. Which brings us to Battlefield 6, the supposed return to form for the franchise. And yet somehow, it still fails to capture what made those older games so memorable. And when you start to take a look at the trends from the latest releases, the answer becomes quite obvious that EA and DICE have just simply forgotten what made Battlefield so special in the first place. Battlefield had always prided itself on its immersion, pacing, and large-scale combined arms combat, but Battlefield 6 struggles with all three of these core philosophies. From the exaggerated animations, to how fast you get from one objective to the next, to having yet again clunky and useless vehicles in another Battlefield game. Like, I genuinely could not stop myself from thinking, just how in the fuck did they manage to make this game feel more like Call of Duty? Even from this example alone, you can clearly see the difference between Battlefield 6 and a title such as Battlefield 4 from just how much faster everything looks and feels. Not to mention the overly stimulating reload sound effects and the constant sound that comes from the in-game HUD, both of which give you what feels like some sort of binaural audio torture. But something even more questionable than that is how horrendous this game's visual presentation can be. The grenade indicators, the cluttered UI, the visibility, even just trying to navigate the menus is a nightmare. We somehow just decided that straight up copying the worst designed philosophy from any modern mobile game was a good idea. And how is it that in Battlefield 1, you can watch a fucking blimp the size of a football stadium blow a hole in the map and still see everything else going on around you? But in Battlefield 6, any singular side of any building getting blown into rubble makes you borderline schizophrenic. And the gameplay loop itself is even more of a problem. Every single map and mode in this game are designed to play in such a way that is much faster coming from the Battlefield we once knew. You'll commonly find objectives or choke points tightly packed and condensed into practically being on top of each other. There is just very little to no downtime in between fights or anything else that goes on in this game, and you might as well consider yourself a super soldier since you can practically regenerate back to full health faster than it would take you to spell it. That is, of course, if you even manage to survive a gunfight in this game, considering the majority of the weapons in this game are designed to delete you in 0.2 milliseconds. It's genuinely hard to believe that this was ever supposed to feel like a true Battlefield game. I mean, everything just feels like it's some sort of dopamine machine designed to keep your attention glued to the screen 24/7. And whatever happened to these so-called large-scale experiences with this game? Because instead of getting new and fun experiences with brand new maps, EA and DICE have yet insisted on remastering older maps from previous titles to slapping them into each ongoing season as quote-unquote new content, which I guess beyond the fact that they are just drip-feeding older maps, it wouldn't actually be such a bad thing had the actual gameplay itself meaningfully improved. But the rather sad state of the maps we see in this game are really only one part of a two-part problem, because the game modes themselves are somehow even worse. Cutting the player count down to 12v12 in Rush, as well as defaulting to 24 versus 24 in Breakthrough, to then confining matches into smaller cut down maps, just completely forgoes any sense of scale that might have made the modes somewhat fun in this game. As in Battlefield 6, it hardly ever feels like you're actually some no-name soldier that's a part of a larger team of people trying to break through a front line anymore. Like even a map such as Fort DeVoe from Battlefield 1 that is not only one of the smallest maps available in the entire franchise, but is also a 64-player infantry-only experience on Operations or Conquest, somehow manages to feel more coordinated and just straight up much more enjoyable to play through than anything in Battlefield 6. And maybe people will see this as purely a subjective thing, but I just find it it kind of crazy that even some of the smallest maps ever seen in the franchise on the older titles give you more of a true to form Battlefield experience than any of the largest maps from the newer games today. And you have to admit, there's really no justification in them lowering the bar this much for a so-called next-gen experience. Which I guess what they actually mean by that is that instead of trying to actually fix core game modes such as Rush, they'd rather just remove them from the game entirely. Further on the topic of core features that have yet to be fixed, how might the current state of the vehicle gameplay be doing in Battlefield 6, you might be asking?
Let's take a look under the hood.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the vehicles are basically just copy and pasted slop versions from 2042. I mean, it's really not some big secret that this entire game is solely prioritized around infantry gameplay, while the vehicles just get cast aside like some forgotten piece of trash. But even with a stronger focus on the infantry aspects of this game, the removal of a true class system that not only helped in balancing the gameplay itself, but also contributed to having better overall pacing and team play in favor of this weird middle ground, quite literally leads to very little to none of that in Battlefield 6. Like, who could have guessed that slicing away at foundational features of what truly makes a Battlefield game unique would somehow lead to having a solid Battlefield experience? But maybe that is part of the reason why this bothers me more than it probably should. The older titles for me always had something I found myself coming back to, which is especially true for Battlefield 1. The masterpieces we used to get just simply aren't even in the same realm of the slop that piles up today. And it's not like I'm a hater of change or anything, because Battlefield Hardline of all games was a title I enjoyed quite a bit when it came out, even though it was ostracized for stepping away from the military theme that Battlefield was known for. And you wouldn't be wrong in saying that it's more akin to a spin-off DLC than anything else, but Battlefield Hardline at its core still had a lot of the elements that made it feel like a proper Battlefield experience. But maybe more importantly than that is that it still had an identity, because when your game's design decisions are increasingly dictated by what every other successful live service shooter is doing, you eventually start looking like every other successful live service shooter. But now, almost a year after the release of Battlefield 6, we've yet again witnessed a poorly neglected portal mode and the lack of any proper server browser, along with another battle royale and limited time modes of all things in Battlefield. But alas, modern times come with modern designs. So instead of having somewhat believable factions in this game, let's just remove them entirely in order to facilitate an endless amount of cosmetics you'll find from the battle passes and in-game store bundles. Further surrounding all of this is the decline in the game's player base and the continuation of the 2 steps forward, 3 steps backward mentality with the updates, which all just give off this impression that they are still trying to figure out what kind of game they actually want Battlefield to be. It's just these trends that have started with Battlefield 5 in 2042 are yet again so very present today with Battlefield 6. And I mean, in fairness, this game is at the very least better than the dumpster fire that was 2042, yet it's still so very far from being a true Battlefield experience that has an actual foundation and identity, which all things considered wouldn't be too unfortunate if even just simply trying to play some of the older games had not become increasingly difficult. In Battlefield 1 at its best, there's only ever a good 3 to 4 servers in North America that will actually fill, which is really only at certain times in the evening. And good luck with trying to play Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 without patching the game files yourself to even consider playing without getting blacklisted by the 20-year-old anti-cheat. But I guess all of this shouldn't come as a surprise, since this has pretty much been the leading motto for online gaming since the dawn of time. Leave the old games in the past and replace them with the latest corporate money printer. But all of this is to say that considering Battlefield 6 was their best-selling title, I think it's pretty safe to assume that they are more than likely going to double down from this point onward. And while a solid remaster of any one of the classics would be nice, I honestly doubt that this would even happen if not without some form of modern monetization methods baked in, though I'd love to be wrong. But nevertheless, that's about all I really have to say here. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. See you later.